What's going on, everyone? This is your host, Tarad Rashan, and you are now tuned into Taradcast. For all of you brand new listeners out there listening to our show for the very first time, welcome. And for all of you returning listeners coming back for another spectacular dose of Taradcast conversation, welcome back. Now, here at Taradcast, you can take everything we say with a grain of salt. We simply just want to add some flavor to your meal. So if we're doing that, then we are doing our job. Today's episode topic is a topic that is one that truly defines who we are, and it should define who we are because it deals with certain characteristics, traits, attitudes, actions that we are supposed to do, like a code of conduct in a sense, but many of us don't have it. And so with that being said, today's topic is off code, offload. This is Taradcast. Let's get it. Welcome back to another episode of Taradcast. Again, I'm your host, Tarad Rashan, and today's topic is actually one that I really wanted to get into because when I think about just the subject matter here, I think about a lot of people who have those unwritten rules, who have that code of conduct, who have those certain things that are ingrained within them. So that way, when it comes to themselves and how they govern themselves, or even when it comes to interacting with others in social and private situations, or, just simply having one another's back, there are certain things that they think about and that they put first that govern their actions. And for so many of us, we like to proclaim that we have a code, or we talk about or think about having a certain code. But the thing is, so many of us are so quick to abandon that. And I want to talk about why that is. I want to talk about what needs to happen when that happens. What happens when, or what needs to happen when a code is violated. You know what I mean? Because there are certain things that I believe that we need to have in order to keep all of us in check, to keep all of us in line, to make sure that when we interact with one another, we're doing it from a place of understanding, or we all understand what's going on. We all understand the expectation from one another, and we can execute that. And so that's the main crux of today's conversation. So before I get into the good stuff, as you already know, we have to take care of our housekeeping details. So if you would like to take our show with you on the go, just know that we are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, Spreaker, Podchaser, Castbox, Podcast Addict, iHeartRadio, Deezer, and YouTube. You can also find Taradcast on Throne, which is a free live messaging application that allows us here at Taradcast to exclusively reach our listeners. Make sure to sign up if you'd like to keep the conversations going after the episode. If you're looking for natural oils for ultimate hydration and care for your hair and skin, hit up the Brazilian Lotus at www.theresilientlotus.com. You can also use promo code TARADCAST to receive a discount on your purchase. If you are a lover of authentic, chunky salsas and the most delicious birria tacos in Oklahoma City, make sure to reach out to Morenitas Salsitas at www.CRTN-T.com/Morenitas-Salsitas. Oh, she's got birria pizzas too. Forgot to mention that. And last but not least, if you are in the market for an affordable graphic designer to create your next logo, flyer, album cover, or animated video, check out at Rose Graphism on Instagram. As always, all this information will be in our episode notes. All right. So the first thing that we're going to be touching on is cracking what it means to define code, cracking code itself. So what is it? What is code? Now, to me, I didn't define this. This is my own personal definition here. Code is the set of unspoken rules of conduct, acknowledgments, behaviors, and cues associated with how specific groups of people or an individual person regulates interactions and handles internal and external affairs. And so one of the things that I want to talk about is how specifically for my community, the African American community, the Black community, the Black American community, how we specifically do not have a code. As much as we like to think that we do, we actually don't, because if we did, then we would all know it. And this isn't, the code of the streets, the G code, things like that. I'm going to talk about that. This is not that. This is something that each and every one of us could actually learn and follow. And it is something that we inherently do not possess because of our position in this country, because so many of us are trying to get ahead of one another as opposed to working together. We're trying to, as Issa Rae said, she's trying to network across as opposed to networking up. We're not taking time to actually spread our resources across to one another, and instead we're trying to outdo one another. You know what I mean? So we don't really give much time and attention towards the betterment of not only who we are, but those of us who surround us and help us to elevate to these different stages. And so, most ethnicities and races, they have their own code. They have their own way of being. They look out for one another. One of the biggest people that a lot of Black people look up to is Al Pacino's Scarface. You know what I mean? And he's Italian. Italian people have the family. Everything that they do is for the family. They handle things through the lens of the family. And if you are accepted into or grafted into the family, then you have to abide by what the family does. You have to abide by the family rules. There are many things that we do not think about that we want to adopt because we see these things in these movies, and even like The Godfather as well. The fact that they handle certain situations internally. They don't let anybody else get involved. When it comes to running their operations, they know who's the point person, they know who's backstage, they know who's the face, they know who's handling all the heavy lifting, they know who's doing all the planning, and they trust that. They have a unit, they have a system. And because they have a system, they're able to work alongside one another and know that this is my position, this is how we're going to succeed, this is what needs to be done to get there. And so many of us Black Americans, I feel, we have the Al Pacino posters in our rooms because we look at this particular man, or we have the Marlon Brando posters in our room because we look at this particular man as goals for what we want our life and our code of conduct to be. Because, again, in the Italian world, it's often a lot about family, and we see this all the time, even in movies that are not the Italian gangster movies. We see the element of family. We see the element of inclusion. We see the elements that make up their success, and the elements that make up their identity. And the fact that everyone knows their role, everyone knows why they are there. And there's an element of love, but there's also an element of responsibility and duty included in that. I feel like it's something that, for many of us specifically, we are lacking. because most cultures, they have cultural behaviors and beliefs that preserve their foundational integrity. And I feel like this is due in large part to the fact that so many cultures have been around and have been able to flourish in the ways that they have, because for the most part, their traditions have been untouched. And I feel like because their traditions have been untouched, they've been able to navigate more and more. They've been able to bring more generations into these types of traditions that have provided the standing ground, the foundational aspect of who they are. And so even the newest generations receive the opportunity to grow up in a unit, in a system, in an entire community that is growing and thriving and knowing what it means to look out for one another, to provide for one another, to be a reliable person within the entire unit. And I feel like when those types of people are born into something, they have a sense of pride about it. You know what I mean? Because they know who they can go to. They know where they can go. They know where family is located. They know that if they were to ask, they should receive. And if they don't receive it directly, they'll receive resources that allow them to obtain what they need, because they have a code. And oftentimes, the code involves taking care of the family, making sure that the family is good. Don't allow anyone into the family that can mess up what we have going on. You know, and I know I'm spending a lot of time talking about Italians, but it's one of the easier topics, or one of the easier groups of people rather that I can look to, because so much of their media has impacted our community. You know, I remember when, back when I was a Christian and going to church and whatnot, and our preacher had passed away, and I remember at the funeral there was music that was being played, but when he was being brought in, the family was being brought in, I believe it was the theme music to The Godfather playing as his family was walking in to be seated in the first and second rows before, or as the funeral was progressing. And I found that to be so interesting. And may he rest in peace. What I'm saying is in no disrespect to him or his family, but I found it very interesting that music to The Godfather was requested of him before he passed to play as his family walked in. And again, The Godfather is an Italian gangster movie, Italian mob movie. But again, it centers on family. The things that happen for the family, the things we do for the family, the way we have to look out for the family. And so when his family, his Black American family walked in, the theme music to The Godfather was playing. And that was very interesting to me. It was very interesting to me to listen to be a part of, to see and to hear, because, any song has been played. But again, when we think about the idea of what a code is, one of the first things that it involves is the family and how you treat one another and how you look at one another, how you think of one another as a unit. And so to have his family walking into this music, it really said something to me. It said to me that we do not have a code as Black Americans, because again, as we all already know, our culture is made of scraps. Our culture is made of hand-me-downs. Our culture is made of discarded pieces. And so we do not have that same level of reverence for the overall unit. We don't have that same level of reverence for one another. We don't have that same level of reverence for our own family members, our friends, our loved ones. We don't have that same reverence. And honestly, we do not have a code that encompasses all of us, because most of our codes are rooted in navigating through and surviving a lower socioeconomic atmosphere. Think about that. Like I said before, I was talking about the G code or whatever, the code of the streets, quoted by Gangstar. But, the things that basically govern how you act in the lowest socioeconomic status. The things like no snitching, Like, yeah, all of us know what no snitching means. But at the same time, when it comes to our economic status, especially for those who adopt that particular way of thinking, what no snitching should really mean is that if something happens, if one of our own does something that is not in line with what needs to be done, then we handle it internally. But what we have devolved that into is whenever police are involved, do not tell them what's going on, And because of that, we don't give ourselves the authority to truly handle a situation in the way that needs to be handled. The way that we do it, the way that we would choose to do it, would be very sloppy, be very messy. There is no clean way of doing it, And we simply just don't want the police to get involved because, we think that we can handle certain situations, but we haven't really made it to a point where we have a system that teaches us how to deal with those who breach terms and conditions, the terms of the code itself. So we will sit here and we will say no snitching. We won't say nothing to the police, this and that. But we do not have a specific system that teaches us how to deal with those who break the code. And another thing about the way that we act in the streets, the G code and things like that, is that we put money over everything. We think of money over everything, and because of that, it is all about the dollar. That's the only thing that remains. And and we see this a lot in our media as well. We see the drug kingpins who, when it comes to their money, it does not matter if you are, family. It doesn't matter if you're a friend. It doesn't even matter if you're a lover. You are disposable. And in many other movies, this is the same thing as well. But we adopt this into our culture to where we will betray one another, or we will even have people gunning for our heads, figuratively and literally. We will have people coming after us because we are the top of this tiny little food chain in this tiny little area, and because money is the only thing, there is no time for rest. There is no time to relax. You always have to keep your head on a swivel, basically, to quote Tommy from Power. You got to keep your head on a swivel. You can't trust anyone. You can't. Because when it comes to making paper, that's the most important thing in that moment of that day, within that week, within that month. That's the most important thing. So everyone is disposable. You can't fully trust anyone. And if you're living like that, if this is your particular code where money comes first above any person, anything, any idea, if that is what comes first, then it is not going to matter who is in your circle, because they can be quickly replaced. It's not going to matter who does this or who does that, because as long as the money is coming in, the money reigns supreme. And people have no actual value. They're all pawns. And another thing that we have is, especially with Clinton's 2-strike rule, like the 90s and whatnot, or the 3-strike rule. I'm sorry. A lot of us have adopted a way of being where if one of us has gone to jail 2 times, then if we do something stupid, if we commit a crime, then we expect another person to take the fall for it. We expect even our woman to take the fall for it. And that's a part of street code. That's a part of G code, That is part of it, Are you going to take the fall for me? Like, isn't that crazy? Because again, people who are in a lower socioeconomic status, and this is not just pertaining to Black Americans, anybody who's in a lower socioeconomic status is going to find themselves subject to crime by those who look like them. This is just all across the board. So this eliminates terms like black on black crime and stuff like that, because if you are in a poorer area and the people in that area look like you are going to find crime being committed by people who look like you. That's just what it is. That's just what it is. And so when you see that, especially for us, we are going to expect, like, if we are in a relationship and I've been in jail twice and I cannot afford to go back to jail a third time, because if I go back a third time, that means I'm going to be in there for a long time. Then if we do something stupid like commit a crime, because that's what we know to do, as far as trying to get ahead or feel like we have something, again, elements of thinking in a lower socioeconomic level, then we are going to commit that crime, but we are going to expect the closest person to us to take the fall for it, so that way we can continue to commit crimes. That is one of the craziest things I have ever learned. And I hope and pray that I never, ever find myself behind bars. And much respect to those who have gone to prison and come back a changed person. Because I know that things are hard. Situations are hard. I've lived in the very same hoods that a lot of these people have lived in. I grew up on the east side of Oklahoma City, so I know what was there during my time there. And if you were able to make it out in that sense, and to truly improve, and to be a resource, to be of value, to see the world, and to know that there is more, then shout outs to you. Like I'm the kind of person to where it's just like I can acknowledge that great things can come from anywhere. It doesn't matter if it's a lower socioeconomic status or upper middle class or high class or whatever. Great things can come from anywhere. But one thing that I know that most of us, the majority of us Black Americans know, is what it means to be in a lower socioeconomic status. And because of that, that frames so much of our thinking. But the thing is, because it frames so much of our thinking, we have things like this. We have this offshoot of a code that we think we need to abide by. But in reality, all of it is BS. It is. And we are very overly critical of those who don't fit the codes that derive from these settings. We automatically think that these people think that they're better than us. You know? It's funny how we project those types of things onto one another. Oh, you think you're better than me because this and this. No, I didn't say that. That's what you believe that I'm thinking. That's what you believe about me. Honestly, it's what you believe you should have. But because you're here, you think you'll never have it. And because you think you'll never have it, you have become accustomed to just living and trying to thrive at this lower level. You know? And that's one of the things. I feel like we also project onto others as well. You know, think about Barbershop. Remember the movie Barbershop where I believe his name, what was his name? What's his name? Derek? I forgot. The guy who was going to be a politician and stuff like that. He was in the barbershop cutting hair, and you know, he spoke eloquently and things like that. And he did not fit the way that a lot of people in that shop grew up. He didn't fit their speech. He didn't fit necessarily the entirety of their swagger, you know what I mean? But he wanted to do other things. You know, by the time Barbershop 2 rolls around, he's a politician, you know, and that's what he wanted to do. But throughout the majority of them, he was looked at as someone who didn't fully understand the Black experience because he actually wanted better for himself, and he went out and got it. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, that projection. Because if you don't follow those rules, if you're not someone who's going to live by the whole no snitching thing, if you're not going to be someone who lives by the code that is set in this particular level, then you're not to be trusted. Who are you? Why are you here? You're not one of us. You know? And we are very critical of people like that. We are. Let's just say it. We are. And because of that, we will push people away that can actually help bring us out of certain situations. But we've become so complacent and used to being in the situation that we cannot see anything past it. And so we adopt these actions as our code, when honestly, it is just a reaction to our socioeconomic status. That's what it is, a continuous, lifelong reaction to our status, to our level in this lower socioeconomic atmosphere. And so what I want to do is take a break. I want you all to get some water, get some wine, some juice, whatever. Go get an icy from 7-Eleven. I mean, it's perfectly fine. I just want you to stay hydrated, because when we come back, what I want to do is just talk about some things that we could put into place that could establish our code. And also, with establishing those things, what it would mean to be off code in this sense. So go get hydrated, and we will be right back. This is Taradcast. Yo, what's good, everyone? This is your host of Taradcast, Tarad Rashan, and I just want to welcome you to the commercial break. Now, you already know what time it is. It's hydration time. Get some high-quality H2O in your system now. Got a few things I'd like to go over. First, to all of our new and returning listeners, thank you so much for your ear and your time. To all of our Patreon supporters, I just want you to know that we are not able to do this without your direct support. So the biggest, dopest Taradcast thank you goes out to you. If you're listening in and you're thinking about becoming part of the Taradcast Patreon family, we'd love to have you. You can find us at www.patreon.com/Taradcast. Now on Patreon, we have 3 tiers of support. A $2 tier, a $3 tier, and lastly, a $6 tier. Each tier comes with its own set of unique perks, so if you find one that fits you, sign up. For us, the main thing is keeping our subscription prices affordable. We know that you work hard for your money, and if you choose to support Taradcast this way, we truly want to make it worth your time. To find out more about our Patreon and the perks with each tier, visit www.patreon.com/Taradcast. We've got it all laid out for you. Also, we've got a merchandise store. Pick up some tees, hoodies, leggings, and more at forevercertain.redbubble.com. All proceeds go right back into the Taradcast podcast and allow us to keep making high-quality content for people just like you. For our listeners out there who would like to support us in a non-monetary way, we'd love that too. Share our show with people you know. Also, share us on your social media. And if your favorite Taradcast streaming service allows you to rate and review our show and you're loving what you're hearing, take some time and leave us a 5-star review. Ratings and reviews are what set us apart from other podcasts and also helps us to recommend our podcast to other listeners we otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to reach. Lastly, if you'd like to reach out to us directly, email us at taradcast@CRTN-T.com. That's taradcast@CRTN-T.com. All of this information can always be found in our episode notes, so make sure to check there if you forget any of the information we just went over. Once again, thank you all so much, and let's get back to the program. All right, y'all, we are back. This is Taradcast, and I'm your host, Tarad Rashan. And so before we talk about what it means to be off code, I think it's important that before we go further into that realm, we take a moment to establish what an all-encompassing code could look like for all of us. And I think that an actual code would include some of the following things. I made sure to write these down because this is what I believe our code could be and should be. So let's go ahead and start. So when it comes to the code of the Black American, strategic silence needs to come with what we build, how we spend our money, and who we support. We need to have public solidarity for those of us who have proven to deserve it. We need to buy Black first, and this includes products, food, professional and amateur services, and other things of that nature, in order to keep our dollar circulating within our community repeatedly. There needs to be equal treatment within the melanin spectrum. We need to look out for our own, whether we know them or not. We need to heal, protect, and stand alongside our children. We also need to thoroughly vet other races, ethnicities, and nationalities before providing unlimited, absent-minded access to us. And we need to do this completely before we decide to go hard for them harder than we go for our own. We need to embrace, as a community, the varying strengths and interests that cater to our uniqueness and individuality. We need to disown those who create yet abandon families and children if they refuse counseling and accountability practices. That goes out to the deadbeat dads out there, the ones who are out there just getting women pregnant and not caring. Also, we need to have internal handling and discipline for those who publicly or privately act out of line, for those who shame and embarrass or put down another black man or black woman for the sake of self-gratification or selfishness. With these things in mind, y'all, if things like this truly encompassed our code, it would be a lot easier, in my opinion, to identify and remove those of us who purposely go off code. So, with these things in mind, with the things that I outlined in mind, what does it mean to be off code? Well, first thing, I can definitely talk about tearing one another down and trolling one another for likes and for clout, because we do it all the time. Now that social media has become an integral part of our lives, we want to seem like the best person out there. And it doesn't matter who we stomp down in order to elevate that perception. It doesn't matter. It can be one of our own. Oftentimes it is one of our own that we are stepping on, stepping over, shoving to the side in order to make it seem like, oh, I'm the best person who looks like me. As opposed to just realizing that we all have our own unique perspectives, strengths. We all have a way of being that, because we're so different, it allows us to just see the world differently. We can learn from that. We can. But we would rather tear one another down and troll one another for likes and clout. Because the more popular we can be, the better we will feel. And that is just a product of low self-esteem, which also comes from, well, it doesn't always come from, but it can come from. It's a big component of growing up in a lower socioeconomic status. You will climb on top of one another, not to reach something collectively, but simply to be the one to reach the top first. And everyone that you're climbing on top of, you will let fall just to say that you made it to the top. Another thing is airing dirty laundry for the entire world to see, absorb, and interpret. We do this a lot. We call it exposing people. We call it exposing people because, not everybody is perfect. Everybody has some things that they've done that they're not proud of. Everyone has this. Everyone does this. It is not new. But to me, I look at this as being off code because, again, if the entire world knows about the bad decisions or the wrong decisions or whatever that one of ours has made, then they are free to interpret that however they see it. And they may not know the inner workings of our relationships. And so by doing this, we are providing an uneducated person's mind when it comes to our culture and the way that we govern ourselves. We are allowing this particular person to freely decide if something is wrong or right, and they know nothing about the entire situation at all. So if we actually had a code, we wouldn't air dirty laundry. We would protect this information. We would handle it internally because the rest of the world does not need to know. We are some of the loudest people, period, whether we are right or wrong. And the thing is, at any given moment, the entire world is going to know exactly what we think, exactly what we feel. And because of that, because most of the world is not truly comprised of people who look like us or really who care about us. They are not going to have the level of understanding that we have about a certain situation. And therefore, they are going to be able to spin it however they want to, with whatever limited knowledge they have about us. And so when it comes to airing out dirty laundry, we need to handle that internally. That doesn't need to be put out there to the rest of the world. For what? What benefit does it have? There is none. Another way of being off code is to outwardly praise other races, nationalities, and ethnicities at the expense of denouncing black men and black women. We do this a lot. I think about the shoulder shimmying, Caucasian guy who was part of one of these fraternities, and yeah, he just so happened to be, a Caucasian guy with some rhythm. That's great. That is great. But this is a black Greek fraternity. And again, I'm not necessarily saying that I'm against inclusion. I'm not necessarily saying I'm against integration, because in many aspects it's great. But at the same time, I remember watching a couple of videos, watching this guy doing his shoulder shimmy, and the fact that all of the attention was on him. He was directly in the middle. And we do this a lot. We will praise other people who do not look like us, but who we allow in. We allow them in. And because we allow them in, then most of the focus and attention is going to be on them, because naturally they do not look like us. We are familiar with one another, and out of that familiarity becomes complacency. It evolves into not really seeing the magic or the uniqueness in who we are, because we look like one another. And so somebody who looks completely different has greater pull, greater impact, because we elevate them not only as a spectacle, but as someone who is coming in and they want to basically be us. And because they want to be a part of who we are, we will gladly just swoop them in with open arms. But the thing is, these people, they can also go back to wherever it is that they came from and be okay, even if they are the outcast of the family. And that's another thing. We tend to accept the outcasts of so many cultures because we ourselves feel like outcasts. But the thing is, the way that we accept others into our fold, we elevate them so high, but we don't do the same for our own. So, again, even these actions denounce black men and black women in general, because we love to see the shoulder shimmying Caucasian boy. We love to see, a Caucasian girl that can imitate our dance moves, And I remember even talking with my wife about this particular type of thing. But it's like, if a black woman's angry, then, she's angry. But if, somebody else, like a Latina woman, is angry, she's feisty, those kinds of things. And another way that we are off code is the colorism and fetishization of lighter, paler skin tones. So even just with what I just said, even in our own community, the darker your skin is, the angrier you are thought to be. And so if a dark-skinned person, even a dark-skinned woman, is angry, she's an angry black woman. But if a lighter-skinned black woman is angry, she's feisty, It's the same thing. The closer you are to white, the less angry you are thought to be, even when you are at your maddest. And I just find that to be just crazy, because we do this with our own. We do this with our own. The darker you are, the less desirable you are. The lighter you are, or the closer to white that you are, then the more desirable you become. And don't be biracial. Again, nothing against biracial people. You didn't have a choice. But don't be biracial, because at that point, you're like the cream of the crop, the top 1%. You fall into the lines of being exotic to most black people, and we fetishize that. We desire that because, again, we have this familiarity with our own. And because we have that, to me, that's off code. It's off code. You're off code. Another way of being off code is being physically, sexually, and emotionally irresponsible and abusive. This is one that really sticks out to me. When I was trying to identify certain things to talk about, this was one that really sticks out to me. Because one of the ways that we tend to interact with one another is in intimate situations. Most of us, and I'm just going to say most of us black men, we don't really put a lot of time into thinking about what we truly can give. A lot of us are broken. A lot of us are stunted emotionally. And one of the things that we truly feel that we can give is opportunities at pleasure. And so we highly engage in these acts because we know that we can make a person feel a certain way because we put our all into getting some. You know what I mean? We put our all into making our partner feel good in an intimate setting. And in many cases, that is the only setting where that person actually feels cared for by us. But when it comes to our day-to-day emotional well-being, we are unstable. A lot of us are unstable because if you were to even think about trying to regulate your emotions, that's too much of a feminine trait. It's too much of a feminine trait to have control over how you act, to know when it is right to have this emotional response and when it is not, to understand the emotions of others. And so we will be willingly irresponsible and abusive. But when it comes to those intimate, those sexual situations, we can make someone feel like they are on top of the world, because that is the only time where even the smallest hint of our vulnerability can be seen and felt. But oftentimes, most of us are doing it as if we're engaging in that act in front of a camera, whether it's visible or not. And that's the craziest thing. That's the craziest thing, because this is also abuse. This is also abuse. We treat our women like they are secondhand trash. But when we want some, we'll do any and everything. Think about Baby Boy. Like, so many people love this movie. I love it because I think it's funny. I think it's funny because there are so many of us who willingly live like this. We go through this cycle of just abuse. And we don't even realize that we are accepting it or that we are providing that abuse to another person, because we simply fail to realize our individual impact on another's life. We fail to realize that who we are comes from being in this lower socioeconomic cycle that repeats and repeats and repeats, to where our actions continue that cycle in perpetuity. And so we will sit here and physically, sexually, and emotionally abuse our own. And that's being off code. I also believe that another way of being off code is adopting the white or Eurocentric standards and using these standards as the lens of which we view our own. And this dates back to, sorry, there was a gnat flying around. This dates back to just when we got here, when slavery was finally abolished and we were free, and we now had to navigate and assimilate into a world that was not built for us. And so the only example that we had is the Eurocentric Caucasian American standard. Because that's the only standard that we had, that's the only thing we knew. We see these people who own these companies, who have this money, who have these clothes, whose children live in houses behind white picket fences. This is what we see, and this is what we believe that success needs to look like. While I do agree that success includes stability, the examples that we have, the things that we define as beautiful, the things that we see as the gold standard of living, they come from ideals that are not from us. And so this is one of the reasons why you would see so many of us thinking that having long, straight hair is beautiful. This is why so many of us think that driving expensive cars is the way to go. This is why we feel like the jewelry, the gaudy jewelry, is a symbol of wealth, when it is just a symbol of immaturity. Because you would rather spend your money showing other people that you had money or have money, but that, you want to have the look, you want to wear your money, because it is a visual representation of you saying, I am better than you because I am wearing this. I have the money to spend on this. And one thing that we did not know is that really having money means to invest, to make your money grow for you. Again, it comes from that better than you mindset that we have amongst one another, which is one of the saddest things, honestly. And so the standards that we have, I also think about what's his name? Kevin Samuels. He is someone who has blown up because the way that he views success is from a Eurocentric Caucasian American standard. Because again, when it comes to some of the top earners in our country, they are all Caucasian men. We know this. We know this. And the thing is, Kevin Samuels as a person, again, a broken clock is right at least twice a day. I can acknowledge this. I will willingly acknowledge this. Same thing I said about Umar, and now I'm a fan of his. But I'm not saying I'm a fan of Kevin Samuels, but a broken clock is right at least twice a day. And so there are some points that he makes that I can agree with. As much as I don't want to, I can. But at the same time, as far as his rise to popularity, it was done at the expense of us. Because he wanted to find success in a Caucasian-dominated world and marketplace. And apparently he has, which is great. Do your thing. Do your thing. But while you are there, the things that you are saying, in many respects, the things that you are also doing, and how you are doing these things, how you are saying these things, rather, this is the most important part, but how you are saying these things I have a problem with. Because you are coming from a standpoint that allows the Caucasian way, the Caucasian standard of success and wealth and being. You're allowing that to dictate how you treat other people. You lack the empathy, you lack the understanding. Like, this man grew up here in Oklahoma City, where I'm from. And to see this, to see this particular person and the way that he speaks to others. But you know what? And honestly, and I have to say this bluntly. Because we as a people, we do have what's called a Chitlin Circuit person. And these are the people that, for me, you know, no offense, but these are the people that believe each and every one of Tyler Perry's shows and movies are good, when all of them are just archetypes and tropes that appeal to the most basic of viewers. And if you throw God in the mix, then you have the recipe, the miracle formula. I feel like when it comes to the Chitlin Circuit version of us, we need to realize that this does exist. And these are also a lot of the people who are calling in and speaking with Kevin Samuels about their problems. And so he is capitalizing, using everything that he has learned about Caucasian standards and whatnot. He is capitalizing on knowledge that he has obtained in order to also put down us. He's not taking what he has learned and saying, all right, look, I've been here. I've seen what success looks like over here. Let's figure out some ways we can mix this and improve this and make it our own. Because us, the people, we're all about taking back things and making things our own, and, you know, all these types of things. We're all about that. We are. Don't deny it. But the thing is, you know, if you've got some insider secrets that are going to help us build one another up, let's figure out a way to do that. So that way, we don't stay in this lower socioeconomic way of thinking, because that's what's going to forever keep us behind. But the thing is, when we start elevating these types of standards, as opposed to figuring out what to pull from and what to incorporate into making our communities better. If you just go over here to where the grass is greener and you're just spitting on everybody else's lawn, then you're basically adopting that white, Eurocentric, Caucasian American standard. And that, to me, is being off code. With that being said, what we're going to do is we're going to take our last break. And afterwards, we're going to talk about what we need to do when we see people being off code. And that is where the offload word comes into play. So when we come back, we're going to talk about when it is time to offload. So make sure you still have your drink close by, take a sip, stay hydrated, and we will be right back. This is Taradcast. All right, we are back, and we are now reaching the tail end of our show. So now let's talk about what it means to offload and when it is time to offload those who are off code. Now, we know what it means to have a code now. Like, with everything that I went over, and I'll make sure to go over this again, but, you know, now that we know what it means to have a code worth abiding by, and what it would mean for us, what it would look like for us to be off code, what would we need to do to preserve the integrity of being on code? Well, to me, simply put, we need to offload those of us who refuse to stay on code. And when I say offload, I mean move them people to the side. They don't have what it takes, apparently. They're causing too much destruction. They're causing too much ruckus. They are interrupting peace. Because in many ways, what we need to do, simply put, and this is probably going to be a tough section, a section that a lot of people would not want to hear because it might be them. Hell, it might even be me. I don't know. But I know that with the world and the family that I'm trying to create, I want to make sure that I am on code 24/7, 365, 366 on leap years. But for those who refuse to stay on code, we need to purge and excommunicate people and disconnect them from the resources that we have. Think about it. There are certain religious entities that do it. When I had my episode a while back where I had my friend Erica, and she was talking about her involvement with her religious organization and the fact that she saw people be basically excommunicated because they were not following that particular code that was established by that religious organization. They lost access to a lot of benefits. It needs to be the same with us. Clubs do it as well. You break the code of conduct while you're in this specific group of people, you cannot come back. You can't. You have violated the code. And because you have violated it, you cannot be trusted. You can't. You did it of your own volition. You did it of your own free will. You probably did it because you thought you would find a way to benefit from it, as opposed to working within it. And because you violated it, you now cannot be a part of it. This is something that we should also take into consideration as well. Because if we are all moving in one accord, then those who purposely decide to go against that forward motion are ultimately going to set us behind. And we cannot afford to be set behind any longer. Some people just have to be kicked out. Some people just have to be let go. Some of us, that's just what it is. It is what it is. It has to happen. It has to happen. If a tree has sprouted a bad branch that is bearing bad fruit, and the rest of the branches are bearing good fruit, are you going to allow that branch to keep bearing bad fruit? There's something wrong with it. And you can't keep picking the fruit from that branch because it is going to make someone sick. I know it's a part of the tree. It's still bearing fruit. I get it, but the fruit is bad. It's rotten. All the other fruit is healthy. It's plump. It's juicy. So what are you going to do with that branch? You're going to cut it off. It serves no purpose. Even though it's a part of the tree, receiving all the same nutrients, it is bearing bad fruit. To keep it means to ruin or to run the risk of ruining the life of that tree. So it has to be cut off. It has to. Or else whatever's going on with that branch is going to infect other branches to where more branches start bearing bad fruit. You can't have that. And I feel like in our community, unfortunately, we are full of that. You know, we are so scared about standing on our own. And we fail to realize that when we do stand on our own, others will join us who identify with who we are and how we are. They will learn our code. They will propel us forward. But we are so scared of not having the numbers that we will just allow even the worst of us to stand by our sides with knives in our backs, pretending as if they have their hand on our shoulder. We have to cut the bad branches off. We have to. We have to. And when it comes to the offloading process, we also need to identify the traits and the characteristics in such people, in these bad fruits. Because these are people who shamelessly harm our overall well-being. People including those who are purposely deceitful. The liars, the compulsive liars, the ones who cannot tell the truth to save their lives. They will make up lies about any and everyone, including themselves, in order to cast blame or to divert attention away from what they're doing. People like that. Also, those who snitch. I know this goes back to the whole G code, street code thing I was talking about earlier, but there are points where I do see that you don't need to be a snitch. You don't. And the reason why I say this is because, to me, I am all about handling a problem internally. Don't go to other people. Don't be out here spreading someone else's business because you feel like it gives you power. You feel like it gives you attention. No. Go directly to that person. Let's handle this internally. That's what I feel. If you're going out here snitching on people, it is time to offload you. Because you could also be just lying. You know what I mean? You could be doing this in the realm of being deceitful. You know, you find out a piece of information, you're running off and you're telling any and everyone, whether they look like you or not. You know? And the thing is, you might not even know the whole story. Or you might not care to know. A lot of people don't care to know. That's another thing. A lot of people don't necessarily care to know about the inner workings and the details of a situation. And so they just take and they run with it. You know? That's what happens. Also, those of us who are abusive, people like that need to be offloaded as well. There's no room for that here. We don't do that here. At least not in my world. Abuse is not something that is tolerated. So if you are out here on a power trip and you don't care how you feel that sense of power, and you will allow that thought process to translate into actions and words that are abusive, it's time to offload you. Also, people who are reckless, those who have no regard for who they are and how they affect others. It's time to offload you too. Being reckless does nothing but put other people in jeopardy. And if you don't care, then you don't need to be around the rest of us who are trying to be on code. You can go be reckless somewhere else. Keep the rest of us out of it. It's not going to do anything for us, but make all of us look stupid because you are the one being reckless and we are having to haul you away. Nah. Have some self-control. Have some self-control. Understand that you are a part of a bigger unit. When it comes to how we are internally, yeah, we can be wild, we can be crazy, all this stuff, but we know that we are in each other's company. Everywhere else, nah, get it together. You cannot be reckless. If you're doing that, we have to offload you. Also, we have to offload the people who are opportunists, the people who would take advantage of one another for selfish gain. We have to offload you too, because that's not being on code. It's not. You are doing things for your own personal gratification, for your own personal means, and you are no stranger to betraying each and every person who has given something to you, who has loved you, who has provided for you. You are no stranger to throwing all of that away for a quick shot at success. Hell, even for a quick dollar. You're an opportunist. You're always looking for those ways to get over on someone, even the very people who have your back and probably believe that you had theirs. If you're an opportunist, you have to be offloaded. You do. There is no room for you here. I'm sorry. Can't have you running around trying to take advantage of each and every person you encounter. What does that say? If we were to keep you here, what does that say? I don't care what you do. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care what your skill set is. I don't. If you are an opportunist, you must be offloaded. And also those of us who are trolls. Come on, you're really out here with nothing better to do than to antagonize another person who looks just like you, just for the sake of doing it. That means you're putting time, energy, and effort into being a dissenter. You're being someone who is purposely going against what somebody else is doing or saying because you have nothing better to do. You have nothing better to do. I don't want that energy around me. Period. I don't want it. I don't want it. Because I know for me, if there is a moment where I can uplift someone, I'm going to take that opportunity to uplift them. I'm not about to sit here and nitpick and try and figure out what I do and don't agree with and this and that, just to write comments or just to say certain things that disagree for the sake of disagreeing. If you just sit here and you troll people, I don't want your energy around me. Period. I don't want it. You must be offloaded. There are some of us that do not deserve the best of what we can create and offer. There aren't, because we abuse it. We don't know how to handle it. We don't know how to respect it. We don't. Because again, with a lot of us, not all of us, but with a lot of us, we come from a mindset that thinks on a lower socioeconomic level to where nothing good will ever happen. And because of that, we don't see good in anything or anyone. And if we do not evolve from that, then quite frankly, there are some of us that just won't deserve the best of what we can create and offer, because we won't know how to perceive it. We won't know how to accept it. We'll sabotage it. And it's a sad thing to think about, but it's true. We do so much damage and we inflict so much trauma on our own through ignorance and indifference. We do, y'all. We do. I know, just our very existence in this country, we come with traumas, whether they are in our DNA or whether they have been experienced through our life and through our actions. We come with trauma. But the thing is, we also will inflict trauma and we will damage one another and we will keep the cycle going. It's like the snake biting its tail. It just keeps going and going. You don't know the start or the end of it. And we will continue doing that for as long as we live. We do it absent-mindedly. And we continue this cycle of creating mindsets, even in our children, that there are no real possibilities. There are no real chances at success. We can't keep doing that. We can't. That's off code. Because we're supposed to be building one another up. You know, there's also no room in this period of time where we are finding ourselves on top. Because if we actually got to a point where within ourselves we found ourselves on top, then we would not allow dissenting, negative, and malicious Black people to remain in our communities. We wouldn't, because we'd be too busy trying to maintain the forward trajectory of success. I think about this because I think about, you know, where I grew up and the fact that so much of that landscape has not changed. Yeah, new things come in and out, but so much of the landscape has not changed. And the thing is, so many of the people there have yet to change. And I feel like it's because we still do not have a proper network, proper channels available to everyone that can really help to shift and change the mindsets found in this area and areas like it. You know, just imagine if the resources that we put into there weren't sucked dry. The resources birthed more resources, which birthed more resources, which births economic growth and economic stability. You know, we talk about buying back certain things, but if we buy it back, what is going to be the end result of us buying it back? Are we doing it to say that we have it? Or are we doing it to provide services and opportunities to others in order to help build and strengthen and inject life into our communities? Because these are also things that will change the community. But for so long, we have never been able to look at ourselves as being people who are on top. And so we continue to allow the most negative and malicious of us to remain in our communities because we feel like if we're here, then, anything goes. It's what we deserve. And that's not it. It's not it. We do deserve better. We don't have to look at Caucasian people for a standard of living. We just have to want better. We just have to want to take care of each other. Simply put, taking care of one another is what allows us to stay on code. Because those who don't want to abide by the code can live freely outside the code, and they can accept everything that comes from it. That is their decision. That's their decision. Because over here in my world, I want to build a village of like-minded people who want to move in the same direction. I want to invite those who don't think like me, even though they do look like me, those who don't think like me, to be a part of this village. Because as long as we are moving in the same direction, I want to hear your perspective. You may teach me something I don't know, but that is necessary. I'm not afraid of that. And no one should, because a differing perspective doesn't mean that your perspective is wrong. It just means that they see things a little bit differently, and you can probably learn something from that just as much as they can learn something from you. It's an equal exchange. And so when it comes to my world, my village, the people that I want specifically in my life, I want people from all walks. I want to learn. I want to know what makes you who you are. So that way, as we are all moving in the same direction, we will be able to take care of one another. But anybody who falls outside of that, who willingly goes against that, rather, you need to be offloaded. You can go do all of that over there. You are free to do it. Just don't bring that mess over here. And before we close, I just want to go over again the code or aspects of a code that I think would be beneficial to us as Black Americans. So my code would include, once again, strategic silence with what we build, how we spend our money, and who we support. Public solidarity for those of us who have proven to deserve it. Buying Black first. Products, food, professional and amateur services, etc. To keep our dollar circulating repeatedly in our community. Equal treatment within the melanin spectrum. Looking out for our own, whether we know them or not. Healing, protecting, and standing alongside our children. Vetting other races, ethnicities, and nationalities before providing unlimited access to us and going harder for them than we go for our own. Yeah, we need to put ours first, basically. Embrace, as a community, the varying strengths and interests that cater to our uniqueness. Disowning those who create yet abandon families and children if they refuse counseling and accountability practices. An internal handling and discipline for those who publicly or privately act out of line, shame, or embarrass or put down another Black man or Black woman for the sake of self-gratification or selfishness. So this is our show, y'all. This is our code. This is well, I shouldn't say our code. This is what I believe our code could be. Because for me, this is something that if we were to really put this into practice, we would have accountability for one another. We would look at one another through new eyes and new lenses. And through that, we would be able to move and to march towards goals that will see us being way better off than where we are now. Because now we all have something to focus on. We have something that will continue to guide our interactions. It will continue to guide how we move and how we do things. It also guides how silent we need to be. Because again, like I said, if the world knows every move that we're making, then everybody's going to see us coming from 30 miles away. And there's nothing we can do to stop it because we let ourselves be known. So let's do everything we can to start accepting things like this and to make it a part of who we are. So that way we can actually build ourselves up and keep these things going long after we're gone. But that's our show, y'all. You all know how to find us. You all know how to support us. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review and also take the conversation to our throne room. The links, along with everything else, are in the show notes. And as always, I want to leave you with this. Wherever you are, whomever you are, I want to always encourage you to be more introspective and vulnerable with yourself. Know who you are, trust in who you are, and love who you are. Again, I've been your host, Tarad Rashawn. This has been another episode of Taradcast, and I want to thank all of you for listening. And last but not least, make every effort to find and keep your peace. Till next time.